DC and Helwani got a show over on ESPN Plus. I was just watching it because they were debating Oscar De La Hoya versus GSP. And Errol brought this up, and Errol brought it up from the perspective. He even said this to Daniel. He goes, let's break this down real fast because this seems to be the one that just won't go away. So what do you think's going to happen? Now, stop right there. I agree with Errol. Why is this the one that won't go away? It's very clear this fight can't happen. And it's ultra confusing who's trying to put this on, okay, which starts with Triller. Triller's trying to be the promoter of it, but you now have Oscar involved. Oscar owns Golden Boy Promotions. So why is Oscar being promoted by Triller? Simple question. I would learn something if I knew the answer. I would love to have that answer. Why is Triller trying to put on a fight with one of the biggest promoters in the world? Why isn't Oscar promoting it? Why is Golden Boy not doing it? Why is Triller involved? First question. Second, it's very clear they're not going to get George. George is under contract with the UFC, and if George would like to fight, the UFC will allow him to fight with the UFC, not to go out and box somewhere else. Now, Dana has shown a real generosity in the past. As a matter of fact, he even did it with Askren. Dana got no credit. Most people did not know that Dana had to allow that to happen with no compensation, no co-promote, straight favor. Nobody ever thanked him. Nobody said, what a nice guy. They piss all over him. They come after him, and then they want to come back and say, oh, can we have another one of your guys? Another one of the guys who you built, who you made well-known, who you have the legal fiduciary right to monetize. We don't want you to participate at all. We want to take him and go and do all this. Oh, and by the way, not only are we not going to thank you, we're going to insult you as a way of trying to get what we want. I mean, do you see where this whole thing just gets weird? Because there is a way to come at Dana. It would be very non-publicly. It would be very polite. It would be the way that Ben Askren did it, where nobody knows or sees, and you just get a guy on a human level to go, yes, is this what you would like to do? Of course, I don't want to stop you from going and doing what you want to do. Okay. Nothing sophisticated. Polite. That's the rule number one. You want to deal with Dana? Be polite. Word to the wise. We're done with that. You cannot unfry this egg. It's gotten now to the point where Oscar has now challenged Dana to a boxing match. I mean, that's the opposite of polite. That's hostile. But there's no way to undo that. There's no way to, you start going in this direction. You see you don't get what you want. So you start coming in this direction and see if you get what you want. And you start coming in this direction. Right? I mean, this is a real thing. I deal with it all the time, but it's with my children who are 5 and younger. They try all sorts of different angles to see which one sticks. It's called being manipulative. I understand the whole thing. I'm happy and proud of my kids that they're starting to learn the system. I also forgive them because they're 5 years old and Oscar is now doing this publicly. Oscar is trying to get GSP, right? And it's the golden rule in life. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. If the shoe is on the other foot, Oscar has Canelo Alvarez, by example, under contract. He has Ryan Garcia, by example, under contract. Do you think Oscar is going to let either one of those guys go to the UFC right now without him getting to participate? He's literally asking Dana for something that he himself would not do, thus breaking the golden rule of life of treat other people the way that you want to be treated. And I don't know how bad, by the way, Errol and DC broke down what would happen in this fight, and DC was pretty dismissive of George's chances. And quite frankly, Daniel should be right. For Oscar De La Hoya, who won the Olympic Games, I believe in 92 in Barcelona. I watched it, but I believe it was 92 Barcelona. I believe he won 6 divisional world championships. I could be confusing him with Floyd's record. For him to go in, and George St-Pierre, who's never done it before, Daniel, in theory, is exactly right. Here's the problem. It's George. George is a problem. I don't care if you're going to go play basketball. If George St-Pierre commits to it, and George won't just agree to go play you a game of pig, by the way. He will get trainers. He will break down. He will assess. He will get a set date. There will be a lot of things before George St-Pierre enters any competition that's going to be seen publicly. I don't care if it's basketball. If you're dealing with George, you got a real game on your hands. And while Daniel is absolutely of the same mind as I am that George should not, a person should not be able, having never done something, to step in and beat Oscar at exactly what Oscar spent a lifetime doing. But it is different. Oscar's in his 50s. The last time we saw Oscar, we all saw him together. It was public. He was stoned and drunk. So now you have not only an older man, you have an older man who openly has substance issues, who has gone through rehab, who's blamed certain aspects of his life on cocaine use. I'm not speaking out of school. This is all things that Oscar's shared. I'm not personal friends with Oscar. Oscar shared these things. But he also shared it and presented it over a decade ago as yesterday's problem. But we saw on live television 6 weeks ago him stoned and drunk. So if we know that he was abusing years ago, because he shared it with us, but we also know that he's abusing right now, we draw the connection that he never stopped. That's a totally different 50-plus age-year-old man. There's a few things that will age you very quickly. Alcohol, cocaine, lawsuits. He's got all of them. Oh, you want to know a fourth thing that'll make your body a hell of a lot older? Fist fighting. Now you're taking on St-Pierre, who may have never done it, but he did something close. He did something that resembles boxing. He certainly knows how to box. We saw him be the only MMA fighter in history to control a world title fight. It was his second match against Josh Koscheck with a jab. That has never been done before or since, where somebody has controlled a fight in MMA with a jab, busted Koscheck all open. I mean, just by example, we know George has hands. Can we all agree on that? He spent ample time with Freddie Roach, who is a genius. Can we all agree on that? Teddy Atlas has broken down George St-Pierre's boxing and gone as far as to call him one of the best boxers in the history of MMA. Can we agree Teddy's opinion matters? Yes? Okay. Oh, and by the way, should I mention, George St-Pierre, who's 39 years old, leads a life of absolute discipline. You won't pull up a photo anywhere of George looking out of shape. Anywhere in his life did he balloon up and have to get back down. You won't have any substance, any rehab. Not just because George keeps it private. George just doesn't do that. George will go out. He'll have a good time like anybody, but 8 a.m. he's in the gym the next day. Never misses the bell. First 5 days of every month, George St-Pierre goes on a water fast. I'm just offering, but did you guys know these things? Absent of competing, George St-Pierre lives a life of discipline. So he's 39 years old, damn good at combat, never boxed, taking on a 50-plus-year-old man who's been stoned out of his mind, according to him, for an entire chapter of his life, and according to the public who all saw him the last time he was on television, allegedly in training camp, he's drunk and stoned. It's very different. It's a very different match, and I am not willing to say that Oscar could beat George St-Pierre. I'm not willing to do it. I was surprised that Daniel said it. However, I think if Daniel heard what I just said, I don't know that Daniel knows these things about George. I don't think that he knows that when George goes on safari or goes on vacation, he takes a trainer with him. Practices 2 times a day, every day, 6 days a week, rests on Sunday. I'm sharing with you. This is a guy who has led a life of discipline that is much different. And at some point, no matter how good you are at something, the clock will get you. Has Oscar's clock got him? I don't suggest that. I'm a Golden Boy fan. It sounds like I just pissed all over. I'm a Golden Boy fan, man. I remember where I was in 1992. It was Barcelona when Oscar won the Olympics. I remember when he was face-to-face with his opponent and would not look him in the eye as he was getting instructions because he was looking up to heaven where his mother was. I know a lot about Oscar. I followed his career very closely. I also know about Father Time. I also know about people who lack discipline. I also know that I saw training footage of Oscar De La Hoya. He looked terrible. He didn't just look bad. He looked terrible. He looked like a guy who used to box. He understood positioning. He was slow as molasses going uphill. He understood how hard the work it took. His shirt was about as dry as Anthony Joshua, who, for best I know, has never broken a sweat. I mean, in all fairness, it wasn't that hard of a session, and it was his most proud session because he's the one that filmed it, edited it, and put it out for social media, which lets you know he was at least proud of it. I'm looking and go, man, there ain't a lot here. There's a slow guy who understands boxing who has terrible lungs versus a guy who's the greatest combat athlete we've ever seen, never done pure Western boxing, has in the gym, former sparring partner of Manny Pacquiao, who, as long as the fight is going to go, George is going to be there. I don't know that Oscar would be there. I can tell you he was having a hard time getting through his Instagram workout. I don't know that Oscar's still going to be around at the end of the night. particularly if this is 10 threes. And let's hope to God that it's not. Let's hope that Jake Paul has taught boxing anything, which is shorten the rounds. I don't know these things. The other side, if I'm being really fair with you guys, I don't know how much George wants to do this. I think there's a part of George, whether he's recognized it or not, that he's just enjoying the attention. He's enjoying that people are still asking him and inviting him to be included in some of these conversations. I'm not sure if George was free and didn't have a contract with Dana right now. If George is totally free, I don't know that I believe that he sits down and signs this. I certainly fell for it when he was talking about coming back against Khabib, but I don't know how committed he was to that idea. I think that there's a few things in the way. And I can tell you, I don't believe the thing in the way is Dana White and a legal contract that Dana has with George. I don't think it is. I think that's what's being used as the reason. I don't think that is the reason. So let's start with that. Secondly, if those two were to fight, if Oscar could find a commission that would give him a license, and they're out there, for sure. He's unlikely to get one in California. He could get one today in Nevada, just by example. They're not, it's just a different thing. But if he founds a commission and could get all these things signed up, I don't know that I'm willing to say that Oscar De La Hoya, just because he won the Olympics and 6 divisional world titles in a sport prior to addiction, prior to abuse, drunk and I'm taking a guy at his word. He was in training camp, drunk and stoned on TV. I mean, that doesn't sound like much of a camp to me. I remember when Mike Tyson was doing everything right, but did camp in Hawaii. People that bet on him just ripped the ticket up. And I remember why? What's the big deal? He's in Hawaii as a young kid. What's the big deal? And every adult in the room's like, Chael, how much training do you think he's doing in Hawaii? It's beautiful. You go to training camp in Big Bear. You go in Colorado Springs. You go in New Mexico. You go in places where there's nothing else to do and you can buckle down. He's in Maui. I remember thinking, I don't agree with that. And then I saw him fight. He looked terrible. Weighed in heavier than he ever weighed. Lennox Lewis stomped him out. I mean, it was just one of these terrible things that other people who were more mature than me, at the time I was a young kid, they saw it. They saw it coming. And so I think when you have Oscar, who's in training camp, and we're taking him at his word, who, by the way, is stoned and drunk on television, that's very different. If you've got some kind of addiction, guys, you got something in the closet, something you're hiding, you close your door at night, you lock the door, and then whatever happens, you get up, you face the world, and nobody knows. He wasn't mentally strong enough to say no when he knew he was going on camera. I mean, he just got so in the moment. Oh, my God, that's Justin Bieber's up there singing. I got to get somebody get out the fifth, man. That's that Bieber kid. Like, what? No, it's not the case. I don't know that I agree with Daniel on this one. In fact, I don't agree with Daniel on this one. George St-Pierre whip his ass. That's exactly how that goes. I also don't think that we're telling the story accurately if we're acting as though George's contract with Dana is the only thing holding those guys up. I think that's the thing being used as the excuse. And quite frankly, we're yelling about yelling here. Because whether it is Dana or whether it is a lack of sincerity by George and Oscar aren't getting in the ring.